All right, guys. How's it going, everybody? Fishing California with EBA. We're talking all about fishing California today. We're focusing on Oroville, Lake Oroville. Uh, this is not too far from my neck of the woods, and it's a great fishery. Oroville's located in Northern California, the NorCal region. But I got to tell you, if you want 50 fish days, you want that, go to Oreville. You want potential to catch 100 spotted bass in a day, go to Oreville. Oreville is an underrated fishery. A lot of people, they get frustrated because there's a lot of fish to catch, but it gets a bit, more difficult to catch the larger ones consistently. And some people, they say, well, you just got to cycle through them. Some people, they actually know how to target those bigger ones as well as target those smaller ones. And there's a time, a time to target the bigger ones and a time to target the smaller ones. So let's get into it. Let's break down how to fish Lake Oroville, California. Let's talk about this lake, whether you're going in a tournament, going to fish this lake, or you're just out there just fun fishing this lake, taking your family camping, and you want to do some fun fishing, or one of those anglers who takes this a bit more seriously, tries to, essentially get all you can get. Let's really talk about this lake. Let's talk about this fishery. Absolutely stacked, loaded, with spotted bass. The largemouth bass also have a, there's a few of them in there, but for the most part, you're going to be focusing on them spots. And let me tell you, going out there, getting yourself like a Ned rig and a tube are going to be your best friends. Getting a TRD 2.8 inch TRD by Z-Man, getting natural colors, don't go too crazy. Sometimes when that water clarity gets, stained, you get away with some crazy colors, but a lot of the time that fishery tends to stay extremely clear, like a lot of the other fisheries in the area. And natural colors are going to be your best friend in that situation. So most of the year, most of the time, natural colors are going to be the way to go. By natural, we're talking about variations of green, different color spectrums of the color green, the color brown, the color purple, the color white or bait fish type colors. These are going to be some natural colors I can talk about, but even black. So let's go ahead and let's talk about, TRD 2.8 inches. Get them up on a Z-Man jig head. You're going to be catching fish in no time. Drop shotting them. You're going to be catching fish in no time. Yes, you can drop shot them. A lot of times I like to go as light as I possibly can for the weight. So if you can get away with a 132 or a 1/16 ounce or a 1/8 ounce, it's preferable, in my opinion, 95% of the year, over, say, a 1/4 ounce, because the rate of fall, and did I mention the rate of fall? It allows those fish to look at it, for it to be presented longer, for them to make, have more time to commit. But essentially that rate of fall is just natural and it gets bit. So let's talk about some other ways you can focus on these spotted bass. Other than drop shotting and throwing out a Ned rig, top water can be phenomenal, but it does seem like really doesn't get going until the end of March and kind of tapering off right around the end of, say, June, and then kind of comes back for that fall window. And, once again, top water is good to go. Then closes again right as soon as the end of November comes along with those cold temps. So top water is an option. I like to use poppers and I like to use walk the dog baits. So anything that walks the dog, essentially, it's a particular technique. You're probably familiar with it. I like the Dog X by Megabass, the sliding Dog X. There's a couple versions of those, but you go out there and you get yourself a head-on spook, get yourself any kind of walk the dog bait, any kind of popper in a bait fish color, natural colors, of course, and you're going to be catching fish in no time. And as far as um, what's the word? Say creature baits and things like that. Yes, yes, you can catch a spotted bass on a creature bait, but no, it's not their predominant, it's not their major source of food. So they're not the fish, they're not the smallmouth, and they're not the largemouth, and they're not going to be digging in those rocks like they would. That's just not going to be their thing. So they're not going to be as attracted to. Actually, it's in the books that I've read that's not in their diet. So when it comes to like salamanders, when it comes to different sculpin that are in the rocks, or different crawfish that are in the rocks, the spotted bass has it's just not in its diet. And there might be this rare moment where, one bass defies all, but, for the most part, not its main thing. So what does a spotted bass eat? And a spotted bass a lot of times is going to be in deep water, it's going to be suspended, and it's going to be difficult to catch a lot of the year. Obviously spring and fall being the exception. But as you think about this fish, it's really predominantly feeding on other fish. So all the other fish in the lake, including the other spotted bass, are game and are the primary forage for these fish. So, an underspin with a swim bait is phenomenal out there, represents a bait ball, represents a bait fish. And you can go from the 3-inch to the 6-inch spectrum. You can add a variety of different jig heads and weight styles and all that, blah, blah, blah. But I really want to focus on gear ratio when you guys are out there and you're chucking and winding, say, spinner baits or an underspin with a swim bait trailer, spinner baits with a swim bait trailer. When we're talking about those two techniques, I really want to focus on the gear ratio, because a lot of times the gear ratio is key, and it needs to be in the 5 to 6 gear ratio. I prefer 6, low 6, medium 6 at the most, high 5s, but I really like that window. It's a sweet spot, and you're going to get bit more. So there are some times in summer, though, on the contrary, you can throw those high-speed gear ratios, 8-1, 8-3, 9-1, 10-1, 11-1. You can throw them next to structure. It has to be structure near deep water. And you just burn it. You burn it by that structure really quick, almost like skipping it, hopping it right on top of that water. You can get reactions. But a lot of these fish, when you find one, you're going to find a group. You're not going to find one. You're going to find a group. So getting out there with some of the things that we've talked about, they work really well. I'm not very fond of throwing like jigging a pig with a skirt. And I'm not very fond, like we talked about, of the creature baits and the lizards and crawfish imitations, or even sculpin imitations. Sometimes a worm can be, a robo worm can be phenomenal, but the 4.5-inch is absolutely king, in my opinion there. And it's a weird deal. Greens and purples for those worms seem to be the key there. As far as some of the other things, can you get away with throwing a wacky rigged Senko? Absolutely. But I prefer throwing a 4-inch wacky rigged Senko there over a 5 or a 6. So downsize a lot of your baits, go natural. Let's talk about some other things that I really like to use there. Spoon fishing at Lake Oroville can be phenomenal. The right spoon, has a lot to do with it, but any spoon that is designed for catching bass is like the Miki Vault blade baits. There's some other, say, generic copycat blade baits. What is there? There's trying to think. There's like the Hopkins, and there's the Dust Spoon, and there's some other brands off top, but most of these, there's Jackal and Mega Bass. They have some nice ones, but these spoons can be phenomenal. Going out there with a spoon, it doesn't matter. Winter, spring, summer, fall, winter, doesn't matter. You go out there with a spoon, and more aggressive when the water temps are higher, less aggressive with your spoon fishing, when you're jigging it, when you're yo-yoing it, when you're working your spoon. More aggressive when the water temperature is higher, less aggressive and less in general with water temps that are cool or colder. So keep that in mind. It's a general rule, and you'd be surprised. Going out there with a spoon, sometimes in the dead of winter, just lifting it up and dropping your hand. That is it. You lift up your hand, maybe your hand goes up 1.5 inches, and you drop it. Okay, that's the right now, coldest time of the year. Maybe there's snow on the ground, there's icing around on say grass and other things and trees. It's like icing up and it's really cold. That's something you want to focus on. But right now, I mean, going out there for them spotted bass, like we talked about tubes. I think we talked about a tube is your best friend. You can crack a tube, you can snap a tube, you can drag a tube, you can dead stick the tube. The tube could be thrown on, out there kind of just weightless, drop shotted. You can Texas rig it. I really like darter heads at this lake. So if you guys like darter head fishing, that particular head style works phenomenal. You can throw a worm, you can throw a spinner, a swim bait on the back, and it really works phenomenal. Like worms, swim baits, like I said, 3, 4.5 inch. Really try not to go too big, but sometimes trying to key in on that bigger fish that is there, and the stuff that you're using isn't necessarily getting that bite. You definitely at times need to upsize that bait, get that bigger fish to has more draw power, gets that bigger fish to kind of show himself more, and definitely has the ability to draw him out. A lot of times, some of them smaller baits just don't really key in on those big bass. So sometimes it's one of those lakes where, you get that 6-inch bait, you have a stinger on the back of the plastic, or you have a treble hook, open hook type style bait, and you have a larger bait, and that draws that bigger fish. As far as some of the things that this lake, it's clear water. There's a lot of like steep tapering points and slow tapering points and drop-offs, but it's kind of like it lacks a lot of structure. So it's got a lot of rock. But it just doesn't have so much wood or grass, really. When the lake is full, of course, there's some areas in spring, of course, but for the most part, guys, it's void of, lots of grass. It's void of lots of timber and laydowns and things of that nature, and not even that many stumps. You'd expect a lot more stumps in that lake, but there just isn't. So if you go out there, consider that as a factor. So you're going to be looking for certain features. You're going to be looking for like island tops, you're going to be looking for ledges, you're going to be looking for points, there's secondary points. You're going to be looking for small features, small niche isolated features that are around the lake, and a lot of times they do hold fish because each one of them is significant for different reasons we won't get into, but when you see something that's a variation, that seems like a variation, something that is different than whether it's, a lot of times we talk about transition areas where, say, you go from rock to mud, for example, that would be one of these things I'm talking about. It's got a little bit of both, and sometimes having, some deep water nearby, or other types of features, maybe a creek that's feeding in, maybe it's a windblown bank. These are all different things that really play a factor as to why the fish are where they are. But this lake, great fishery. These things that we've talked about today so far are your primary go-to baits. You're going to go out there, you're going to catch fish, you're going to have a great time. As far as some of the things you don't need to focus on when you're at this lake, let's break down some of the baits you don't want to use. It's going to be like a frog. Frog's not going to be that productive at this fishery. There's not a huge frog population. It's just not a logical, it just doesn't make sense. You don't really want to focus on giant baits. You don't even really want to focus on trout swim baits as much. You're not really going to be throwing giant glide baits or giant swim baits. It's kind of not even, you can do it, and you can catch that one out of a whatever, 1 out of 1,000 fish that you could have got, but whatever it is, it's something I would not recommend. There's fisheries you can go there and it makes sense. There's fisheries it doesn't. So those 8, 10, 12-inch baits, just not the lake. Let's talk about buzzbaits. Not a buzzbait lake, I don't think. Just not one of them lakes where, if it had a lot of smallmouth in it, I think it would be. If it had a larger population of largemouth, it might be. But it's just not a buzzbait lake. As far as chatterbaits go, a chatterbait, I haven't had a lot of success on the chatterbait. Bladed type chatterbait, skirt, trailer, just haven't been doing well, that's predominantly in my experience, a largemouth bass bait. So when you do throw it at Oroville, you're going to usually catch the largemouth, which if you're trying to win a tournament and you need the largemouth, it might make sense. And so as far as, I'm trying to think of some of the other baits I've really just absolutely not liked when I fish there. But for the most part, guys, it's pretty self-evident. We don't forget the hair jig. Don't forget the hair jig, guys. Whether it's custom tied, whether it's you doing it, whether it's some company, Picasso is one of the most popular hair jig companies out there. My experience tells me that they're not, they're good. But there's a lot of different ways to tie a hair jig, a lot of different materials, and definitely try that at Oreville. It'll get you bit. I hope this video helped you guys. We're trying to help you guys catch more fish. It's the state of California. They don't take care of anything. They mismanage all their money, and they have nothing but excuses. And sometimes they don't even have excuses, but trying to provide you guys with a better experience the next time you go out to Oreville, whether it's fun fishing, whether it's at a tournament, and you're just kind of like, man, you're going to have a lot of guys, and it's going to be dock talk, you're going to have boat talk, you're going to have all this stuff, and people are going to like, dude, they're not going to give you the juice. They're not going to get like straight up. They'll give you some basic fundamental starting points, of course, but I've done a lot of the legwork. I know exactly what and what not to throw, why, when, where, and the color spectrum, the reasons behind it, and all that is extremely important. If you guys know, spring is right around the corner. I'm excited. I hope you're excited. Hit smash the sub button, subscribe, like, comment, say something. Let me know if you got a question, if there's something I didn't cover in this video. Obviously, I didn't talk about everything that they're keying in on. They're keying in on other bait fish. So that means other smallmouth. Other spotted bass and other small largemouth. They're keying in on like silver-side minnows and pond smelt and chub minnows and bluegill and sunfish and things of that nature. That's going to be their forage for the spotted bass for the most part. So trying to match that hatch and of course we will have some actual hatches coming this spring and summer. And yes, the spotted bass will eat those. He will eat those, but he tends to kind of lay off. I'd say right around the end of June, middle of July. Spotted bass really tapers off. He goes deeper, and he no longer plays much or eats much from the surface like that for those insects and such. Smallmouth, on the other hand, are a completely different story and absolutely notorious for just smashing those bugs all the way through the entire year from start to finish. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If there's a question you have, put it down below. This is Lake Oroville, California, NorCal. Bass fishing, how to fish it, everything you need to know. And we hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.